lead to somebody having possibly a way of challenging that regulation, legally saying you've adopted regulation that doesn't go with the principles or the RCW.
I'm willing to.
Right?
I threw that out there for discussion.
Yeah, I'm glad you raised that, Phil. What about putting in the definition section, principle, a policy, and a regulation? So anyone reading this document, if they have the same question that Commissioner Johnson had, they can simply go to our definitions and find it there.
Yeah, we've added that to the list, item 8, this pick list that I just prepared, is to consider adding definitions for policy and regulation. So we might round that list out and have you give us direction on yay or nay.
Good.
Good way to approach it, Ken. Anything else on page 3 there? Page 4? Or page 5. I don't have anything else in section 1. Anybody else have anything else in section 1?
No.
If I could read my notes, I might. There's a question, 1/4 at the bottom of the page, line 35, this provision shall not apply to agricultural activities on agricultural land. Do we also include existing agriculture? It may not be on designated agricultural land.
That would be included therein. Yeah,
That does implicitly include in this.
This all goes back, doesn't it, to the Senate Bill 5328? Did I get that right?
Ruckle House Center.
Yeah, Ruckle House group is working on these issues regarding critical areas and shoreline issues like this, and working on the ag interface there between those two. And I don't think we're supposed to adopt anything until sometime in 2010, if I remember right, according to that legislation, because they should be coming forward with their recommendations for that time. So we had that issue with critical areas, and I remember we actually supported that bill.
Right. 3-year process.
Taking that time to do that. And I haven't heard much from them actually lately, so I hope that work's continuing.
So existing ag is implicit in this.
I think we read it that way.
I read it as, okay, so this provision shall not apply to ag activities on ag lands, which are exempt from both critical areas in this program. This is about existing and ongoing ag on ag that is zoned ag.
Only zoned ag.
Right. Not
so somebody farming
somewhere else in rural residential, it does apply to them.
It doesn't apply.
It does apply.
It does.
It does apply.
Okay.
It would not be exemption.
It would not be exempt.
Okay.
And then we deal with that later on with ag.
And there's definitions for the terms in Article 2.
And a quick definition, like if I could, of the rule of strict construction.
Explain that.
Yeah.
So it's a basic principle in law that you strictly construe what the regulation says as it applies to the situation under review. In the case of the Shoreline Management Act, the legislature declared liberal construction would apply. In other words, it kind of goes back to what Stacie said a few minutes ago, that when you're looking at the regulation, you have to refer back to the broad policy and read it according to what the broad intention of the Shoreline Act is.
So it's the opposite of liberal construction, which is explained here. So.
Well, that makes me uncomfortable going back then, once again, saying if we're going back to the principle and we're using the broad language and we're using the word shall and require. Because that seems so explicit. So
Well, the item on the top of page 1.4 regarding the mitigation sequencing, which that language isn't there, but essentially that's what it's describing, is the mitigation sequence required by state law. It starts with avoidance and then goes to minimizing and then goes to replacement or compensation.
Okay.
And certainly if you want to reword that section so that the word shall isn't there,
Well,
I don't think it would be detrimental, because this mitigation sequence 1 is already kind of required by state law, and it's further described in more detail later in the
Okay.
in the document.
So you could replace your shalls with shoulds. That would,
Like I said, there's a lot of fine print in my dictionary on shalls and shoulds, and I read it yesterday, and I take.
Well, shall means you will do that. You shall do
People
it.
confuse it all the time.
Should means, if it says should in the condition of the permit, the applicant probably won't do it.
Oh, yeah.
Should engenders guilt feelings.
Or just that it's optional.
Well, it's tense, it's the word.
Should is oatmeal. That's basically what should.
Yes.
Okay.
But same with construction, liberal versus strict. You can't change a regulation through liberal construction. If it's clear, black and white, it's a law, you can't, and that's strict, read, you have to enforce it. It can't be liberally construed to be something different.
Where that comes into play is where there is that wiggle room, lack of clarity,
Yeah.
that inevitably happens in legislation somewhere. Something that wasn't conceived, something that's new, something, how does this apply, that sort of thing. Which is something that we try to avoid as we go through all these things. Anything else in section 1?
So just looking at the list you've created so far, on the 14th, you had asked to clarify language that the S&P does not apply to individuals, and I know, Phil, you just brought that up. I just wanted to clarify whether we were leaving it or...
If you needed to further discuss that. That's number 3 on the pick list.
We agreed to leave it as it is.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.